Warning, this podcast typically features spoilers and strong opinions. Proceed with caution. Hello and welcome back to Then a Moment, the podcast where two lifelong storytellers talk about stories. I'm Pavi Colin, audiobook narrator, author, actor, performer, etc.
And I'm Colin Funk, childhood development expert and a teaching artist.
And today we're going to be talking about Fionna and Cake, the Adventure Time spinoff that recently released on HBO.
On Max.
On Max, yes, on Max, right. Forgot that they rebranded. It's very exciting. I'm very excited about it. But first, let's talk about our moment of the week.
Let's do it.
All right. You want to go first?
Sure.
Okay. Go for it.
My moment is from, we just watched Bob's Burgers. So the new season is out now.
Yeah.
And there are 2 episodes so far. And we've been talking about this, that the tone of Bob's Burgers this season and starting probably last season,
yeah,
like has started to really shift. Maybe it's from when the movie happened onward.
It feels like it's right. Once the movie happened 2 summers ago, so last season was the first season after the movie. They really, I don't know, they started to kind of pivot just a little bit.
Yeah.
They're really tugging on the heartstrings a lot.
Which they did like here and there before, but now they're really, I mean, this last episode, so the reason, I mean, the episode we just watched last night, the most recent episode, feels more like a kind of like an indie short film.
Yeah, it does.
Than it does like a cartoon comedy TV show. It's crazy. So much so that I'm like, I almost called you on the way here and was like, do you want to do that today? Do you want to talk about that episode?
Yeah, we probably could, because it's really interesting.
We could consider doing just that episode.
Yeah. There's a few Bob's Burgers episode that I've been considering in the back of my back pocket.
Some sort of
maybe comparison or something. But yeah, tell me. Anyway, give me the moment.
The moment. There's a few moments that I'm trying to pick one. I want to say particularly the way they handle. So this episode is the first that they feature that the voice of the episode is a non-belcher. Right. Like the main point of view is from Rudy, regular size Rudy.
Rudy Stieblitz.
Stieblitz? You remember his last name?
Yeah.
Wow. I did not remember that at all. That's hilarious. Stieblitz. But it's from his point of view, and the episode is essentially about him going to dinner with his divorced parents all together.
Oh, so weird.
And their current boyfriend and girlfriend. And the way they handled like a kid coming from a family of divorce, I thought it was well done. It made me really, really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And very emotional at like a lot, because I was like, this is, it's a very different situation than my parents and their divorce. But just like, they do so many like little moments that I'm sitting there and I'm like, oof, this is uncomfortable. Like I think, okay, so the moment I'm going to pick is, I know there's spoilers,
you've been warned already. They've been warned. Yeah.
I know, but like, especially if we decide
they didn't know that they were talking about this.
Right. Yeah. But, okay. Rudy runs away from the dinner because he gets really uncomfortable and leaves. And he's sitting at the table, and Linda is asking like, oh, you're making sure your parents know who you are, where you are, and that you're safe. And then she's like, who should I call? Should I call your mom or your dad or both or not? Like this, like weird, like who are you supposed to be with? This, like the discomfort around it that the adult feels about it, that like that oozes, like it rang so true to so many like situations I had with other adults that were really, they don't know how to talk to me as a kid of divorce. And my parents got divorced when I was 5. I was so used to it by the time I was like cognitive of the world around me and having conversations with adults. And sometimes adults just feel really weird and awkward and don't know how to handle it. And something that feels very normal eventually to that kid still feels really awkward and made worse by the parents around it. And so that like felt really true to me. And I'm like, it made me feel, I was
a good
shocked
moment. It was good.
How many moments like that, like it was silly, but it like really made me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting these flashbacks.
Yeah.
They really did it well. So yeah, that's my moment.
It was a good episode.
It was good.
It was really good.
I felt a lot of things.
Yeah. They've been doing that a lot lately.
Yeah.
All right. My moment of the week. We went on a big long trip internationally. We were in Ireland. And we took a plane because that's how you get to Ireland.
We didn't take a boat.
We didn't take a boat. So we watched a movie together on the flight. We watched The Blackening, and I'd been wanting to see it. It's looked very funny.
But it was available on the plane.
But it was available on the plane.
Yeah.
And so it was like, let's watch that. I really liked it. I thought it was really, really good. And I think that's such a relief because I
thought maybe we could do an episode on.
And another spoiler, we might do an episode.
Maybe.
But
we'll see.
It's really interesting because I think especially like starting in like, 2020 and it was wild, everything happening and protests and George Floyd and everything. And I think there were a lot of like pieces of art that came out that were a little bit on the nose, or they're like way too I don't know what the word is, just not good, and too obvious, or not enough nuance about like race relations and things.
Sure.
And I was afraid perhaps that this movie would be something similar, that it would be making a lot of points that were kind of banal or old hat, or not quite true, or not nuanced enough. I think in those
situations too, when it feels like that to me is when they take the subject so seriously that they can't find any sort of like
no humor at all.
No humor in race relations, which
there's tons, which
laugh at it.
Is obvious in this film. It's so funny. It's really, really funny, and they do it so well. There was just,
I thought it was excellent.
I
really
moment,
was really surprised.
Yes, me too. And the moment that, I guess I was surprised how much I liked it. I thought I would. It seemed funny when I was seeing it, but how much I was like, oh, actually, this is very good. I thought it would
be really silly and fun. But it was very clever.
Yes, it was. And
not that I didn't think it would be clever, but it was like very clever.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was more like Scary Movie, and it was almost more like Dale and Tucker versus Evil.
A little bit.
There was something that is like very self-aware, humorous, but still a horror movie.
Yeah, like somewhere between Dale and Tucker and Bodies, like somewhere kind of like between those two.
Okay, yeah.
Because Dale and Tucker still feels like very spoofy to me. In a way that this was a little bit less, and it was very much like
it was less spoofy
than Dale and Tucker. Yeah, I did. Well, anyway, the whole thing is they like the whole movie they spend kind of going against the tropes of horror movies, and which was really elucidating. because you realize that like you can have like a scary movie without making the people in the movie stupid, making them do stupid things.
Yes.
Like there's always that moment, you know, where it's like, oh, you hear something out the door and then you're like, no, don't go out there. And of course, inevitably someone goes out there when all they would have to do is shut the door. And the moment that I want to pick out is the one where that actually happens, where one of the guys is in like the laundry room of this Verbo or something where they're staying for some like friends weekend, and it's dark at night and he sees or hears something kind of go past this door on the outside that's like ajar a little bit, and he walks up close to it and you think he's maybe gonna go out, and all he does is he just shuts the door and locks it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, what a relief. Oh, that was the best. He just like shuts the door because it's still scary, because then he turns around and like there's a window open and he's like goes to shut the window. Turns out it was like one of their friends was like outside or something, but
sure.
But it was like, it was such a relief, and two, a very funny kind of pointed
like
criticism of like the horror genre, where it's like you don't actually have to have people do stupid things in order for it to be a scary movie.
And they have a lot of moments like that, and you know, we're not talking about the blackening in this episode, so we can move past it. But I will say that I think they did a really good job in having the characters be they do what people do in real life, where they're like, oh man, this feels like a scary movie.
Oh my God, we're in a horror movie.
And then they get to like, because they have that kind of like self-awareness, then it doesn't feel weird that they kind of talk through these situations where they're very like they're very direct about saying like, oh, if I were in a horror movie, like this is the point of the horror movie, that don't do that thing.
Yeah.
Because like they do that pretty obviously, and it works because it feels very real.
Well, right. And it makes me think that other horror movies, like the people, like they're written as if they're not in a horror movie, and that they don't know that they're in a horror movie, and horror movies don't even exist in this world. Right. They've never seen a horror movie in their life, and they don't exist, and nothing terrible has ever happened to anyone until now.
Yeah. All right. But
cool.
That's enough.
That is enough about that.
Moment. Whew. So we could talk about that a lot.
We could talk about it forever.
So let's get to
it.
Fionna
and Cake Adventure Time spinoff. You got a synopsis for us?
Sure.
Great.
Sure. So Fionna and Cake is, I think it was originally meant to be just like a limited series. I think they're in talks about maybe expanding it to a season 2, but it is it's a contained story. So even if there isn't a season 2, it's a really well contained story. But it is you can call it a spin-off of Adventure Time. The characters Fionna and Cake appear in Adventure Time, and they are the gender swapped versions of Finn and Jake, the main characters of Adventure Time. In Fionna and Cake, we find out that Fionna and Cake are not living in a magical world like their counterpoints are. Fionna is feeling a little lost. She lives in a city. It's much more like the real world. It feels more contemporary than Adventure Time ever felt.
Because Adventure Time is like a fantasy,
sci-fi
fantasy future
apocalyptic.
Post-apocalypse. There's a lot of apocalypse. So post-apocalypse magic stuff, and
there's
Finn
magic,
and Jake
there's sci-fi.
the heroes. Finn and being the human boy, and Jake being the magic dog. And now we have Fionna and Cake are the fanfic gender swap version from Adventure Time.
Fionna's
but now we're seeing
the girl
them
and Cake is a cat instead of a dog. Also
and,
female.
Right. And now we're seeing them be not just a figment of someone's imagination, or sort of is, but we'll get there, right?
Sort of. So we both we end up Fionna and Cake. Fionna is having some existential crisis and goes to seek out more for her life.
Yeah.
And then Cake eventually jumps through a portal, which ends up coming out of Simon's head. And Simon from Adventure Time is the Ice King who has stopped becoming the Ice King since the end of Adventure Time, and now just lives as Simon. And so we're starting in the timeline after the Adventure Time series ends. Right. And we find out that Fionna and Cake's reality, their dimension, is inside of Simon's head.
Right. Put there by Prismo.
Which we find out throughout the series. Yeah. So we end up doing this dimension jumping adventure where Fionna and Cake are trying to,
and Simon too,
and Simon, he goes along, are trying to find a crown, an Ice King crown in another dimension. In another alternate reality, so that if he puts it back on his head, then Fionna and Cake's world will be magical again. Yeah, because they figure that since Simon doesn't have the crown anymore, his head isn't magical, so their world isn't magical. Right. We find out that Prismo has created this universe. Fionna and Cake's universe isn't real, so they're also trying to escape this. This cyber,
like he's like sort of police, some kind of.
He's more like a bounty hunter.
Yeah,
like a interdimensional bounty hunter.
All the multiverse in check.
Turning him into little eggs.
Yeah.
They're trying to escape him, so they're jumping from universe to universe to universe,
like alternate universes.
Yeah, alternate versions of their world of Ooh.
Yeah.
And eventually Fionna realizes that she doesn't really want to change her world to be magical again. Simon has a little moment that he
realizes he doesn't want to forget Betty, whom he loses at the end of Adventure Time. By putting the crown on his head, he would forget her, and he decides he doesn't want to. Right.
But he also kind of like puts that aside, and he can move forward a little bit because he's kind of wallowing in this. He goes through this and is a little he doesn't have a lot of purpose in his life until he's like, oh, I know, I'll help these new people. They're a new challenge in my life. And they're able to defeat the Scarab, who's the bounty hunter,
right?
And get, I don't remember, their universe becomes canon.
Yeah, gets kind of like latched onto the rest of the universes, as they're not just fan fiction by Prismo's hand anymore.
I think it's by Golb. Is that Golb just does it?
Yeah, I think Golb does it. Yeah.
And
Betty Golb.
Everything kind of ends kind of nice, kind of bittersweet.
Yeah, a little bit in stasis, a little bittersweet. With a phone connection between and
so
Cake,
and that's
nice.
They clearly left some threads open to hopefully to stretch it out. And speaking of that, that might be a good lead into the Pendleton Ward and the writing team and how good they are at creating stories and leaving little bits and pieces open so that even though they might not have planned far into the future, they leave little breadcrumbs and little threads that are open and not they're not leading to something very specific necessarily.
Right. They don't have to plan everything out as long as they leave the world vast and curious. That said, too, I want to make a note that it's probably the show, and I'd be curious to hear your take on this too. some of it requires what we're going to talk about is going to require knowing a little bit about Adventure Time,
Sure.
which is a relatively long series. I guess it's like 10 seasons, but the episodes are short and it's very good. Highly recommended also. So do that.
Maybe we'll. There's some videos online that are like, here's all the lore from Adventure Time you need to know before you watch Fionna and Cake. So maybe we'll link.
Yeah, we can link to
like
that if you're not. It's a good idea.
Look up for that. We'll try to link.
Yes,
something like that.
And they are the whole series, and with the HBO Max, like the short films that they did too, because they did a series of longer episodes on HBO that were kind of prequels and sequels to the Adventure Time story too. And they run like very good dungeon masters for Dungeons and Dragons, where you just leave so many open threads, so that when you come to the next time you come to the writing table and you're like, well, I need an idea. Well, let's look at all the threads I've left open. Oh, we haven't dealt with this person in a while. What are they up to right now? And this universe that they have created, this multi-dimensional universe, says, as it turns out,
which we knew before, and we had visited other universes.
Yes, but we didn't know that necessarily from the beginning, and that's like
not from the beginning of Adventure Time,
right?
We did from the beginning
of Fionna and Cake. Yes, right.
If you go into it knowing Adventure Time, which I have a feeling most people do.
I hope so.
Because there's a lot, because the world that they build is immense, and I do not know how they keep track of everything. It is wild that they are able to get away with adding on so many different things in so many different directions, time-wise, character-wise. I mean, it's all over the place, and nothing contradicts itself.
Yeah. Well, this is a thing that like authors are notoriously have difficulty with, it's like they talk about the Wheel of Time books and how Robert Jordan was just like, he just kept opening more and more cans of worms, and no one, Brandon Sanderson made a valiant effort to try to complete his series after Robert Jordan died, but it's hard to do. And yet somehow they're able to make this work. And I've thought about this a little. I think it has to do with making a world that is kind of as complex or mirroring the complexity, or kind of like getting close to the complexity of the real world. There are things that you will never really know as you walk down the street, and you're kind of like getting glimpses and bits and pieces of conversations. Yeah. And those things you'll never go down that path as you walk down the street to go to the coffee shop, and there's that couple over there arguing, or a car going past and you hear the music playing through their window. But if you were able to, there's a whole story following that person. There's a whole life over there.
Well, yeah.
And
there's infinite stories.
Of course, in life.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is if it's easy. But as you are creating these worlds, this world, you add enough of those things that are interesting in the moment, that give us a little bit of verisimilitude, or are just funny, because it was like a kid's show, and Fionna and Cake is a little bit more adult, but it's something for entertainment. But the only reason why Fionna and Cake was able to make this happen is because in Adventure Time, they just added so many little things for our entertainment, for
just Fionna and Cake
fun
itself.
The fact that Fionna and Cake was added
concept.
Yeah.
That there is a gender swapped. So that's one thing to say if you don't know Adventure Time. Fionna and Cake in Adventure Time, they existed there. They were in a few episodes, but they were always stories that the Ice King had written.
Yes.
And
because he's loves Finn and Jake. He just wants to be friends with Finn and Jake, and so he creates like his own version that he can like live in his imagination with them.
And he wants it so, but there was a whole episode in Adventure Time where his whole goal is to like go to this place where he can make a wish and wish them to life.
Yes.
And it ends up backfiring. He ends up turning, like, the book comes to life.
Oh God.
So
yeah.
sad.
It's so sad.
But like he he believes that they're real so bad.
Yeah.
And so it's a nod to that, because like they never, I don't think they planned whether or not Fionna and Cake were real.
Right.
I think they were like, why don't we roll with it? See what that's like.
See what happens. Yeah.
And they were able to use Prismo, another character that we know and love from Adventure Time. And Prismo, who's the Wishmaster.
Yeah. Kind of like keeps all of the multiverses in check to some extent.
Yeah.
He's not supposed to make
his
he's
job
not
is
supposed
like
to make
not
anything
completely clear.
Yeah, it's not clear. No, he grants wishes.
Obviously,
if you can make it there, he's the Wishmaster.
If you get to Prismo, you get to ask him one wish. I guess that's the.
And the only thing that we know now, which is new in Fionna and Cake that we didn't know before, is that he can't make anything for himself.
Well, he's not supposed to.
Not supposed
against
to.
The rules.
Right.
It feels like,
but he did.
It's something I really enjoy when there are when we're living outside of reality in a way that's like, there's magic, there's different dimensions, there's characters with these powers that have, but in that world there are real limitations. His job, there are real rules and regulations, and he has a boss that he has to answer to, and there's like what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. There's consequences, but it's also not perfect. It's not like he doesn't just like do the bad thing and he's automatically like sent to prison for life or whatever. Like they
give it stakes.
Those even the consequences and the ability to find solutions or loopholes, things like that. It gives you a way into those larger than life. We never want things that are overpowered so much that they're just, if we had a superhero that's just so powerful, he just like goes and defeats all the bad guys and has no weaknesses, then we wouldn't, it's not a story. It's not interesting.
Hot take. That was always my problem with Superman. It's like too strong. The only thing, like there's kryptonite. Yeah, okay, sure. But it's like that, I don't know. That seems so dumb to me. It's arbitrary.
Yes.
I don't love that because it's too powerful. It just can do whatever and everything, And there's
nice
a nice limitation
kind of,
here.
Like where you get, there's just enough elements of like, this could be an office life. This could be a job. Like you could find yourself in that situation. But Prismo, who's not supposed to make things for himself, has created, he's like, oh, I just want to do something for fun, because he has created dimensions for other people based on their wishes.
Right.
And he was just bored and he just like made up, and he was just like making these characters.
He wanted something for himself.
And just like the Ice King, just like we believe that the Ice King just created these out of his mind because he loved Finn and Jake so much, they took that and just like,
that's actually real. What happened, but it was Prismo
did it, and he actually created a real universe
that he hid inside Ice King's mind.
Yes. Well, and because it was not supposed to be, it's not supposed to exist, so he hid it in Ice King's mind, which was, hidden because he was magic and crazy, maybe.
Yeah, and he would never remember, was the whole idea, that he would be just stuck in that
right, and then nobody would believe him, and it's not, it wasn't on the map of universes, it was way off to the side, it wasn't connected.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting.
Yeah. I think too, I'm curious how the story is so good and they're so good at it. And I want to know how you think it compares with Adventure Time.
In what way? I guess it's so, okay. I think it's great. I think it's so good. It feels like a real extension of it. And I don't feel like they've lost their magic
Mm-hmm.
in a way that like I feel a little bit, maybe this is a hot take. The new season of Futurama so far is good. But there's like something a little bit missing. I don't know. I'm feeling that they're slowing down a little bit. It doesn't feel as like punchy or as exciting as the other ones.
That's
but
interesting.
To be fair, I've gone back to Futurama episodes that I was like, and I've gone back and I'm like, no, that's good.
Yeah.
So it might just be I'm expecting something or something, but because Futurama is like more formulaic.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not feeling and the Adventure Time world at the very least, it just slaps you in the face with crazy new things every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
That you're like, what the fuck? It's crazy. I don't know how, again, I don't know how they create this whole universe, and they're so good at creating mythology and characters that have abilities and powers without over explaining them, without making them too overpowered.
Yeah.
Like the Scarab is a really interesting character, and they're not like he's a villain and he has these powers.
Right.
It's not so prescribed.
Yeah.
It has flavors of that, but like, again, with just enough of it to be like, oh, well, he's like pretty powerful and he's a threat, but not so much that you're like, well, what's the point? Like, he's just gonna come in and fuck everything up.
Right. So it's like they leave a lot of blank spaces.
Yeah.
So it's like this is like I guess I'm like making a list of like what makes this so good. It's like we've got these like you create you create maps, but you leave blank spaces in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like we don't need to know everything. We only need to know what we need to know, because if you over explain it, you're packing yourself into a corner. That's one thing. And I think compared to Futurama, that's an interesting point, because I think one of the things, what's bothering me about the new season, it's funny, it still feels in the same world. It's a little bit more contemporary, obviously, because it's now, but it's also like with current events.
And Futurama has always done that.
And it has done that, yeah. Of course, I didn't watch it until way later, but...
Right, so you weren't watching
so I wasn't
it as the current events were happening?
So it feels a little bit different, but what I think is rubbing me the wrong way is kind of the eschewing of the old story, because Futurama ends so well. It's so good.
That's true.
And then when you start it up again, you have them saying, oh, that thing over there, never mind. Ignore that.
Not really.
It's, well, they can do, they kind of fix a little bit. It's just, it's not even that plot-wise that they can't justify it. It's emotionally, like the feeling of the last episode. It's like it's so moving, the end of Futurama, that then when you like come back and you're like, we got more, you're like, okay, but you kind of finished it though. It's like The Magicians, the book. If you ever read The Magicians, I love that book so much, and it ends perfectly. And then there were 2 more books, and I was like, they're not as good, and they ruin it because you finished. You were done with the story. Right. The story finished.
Well, and that's the thing about Adventure Time is the series was done. Like they finished it,
and yet they're still able to come back with more.
And they're not. And I think they're smart that they're not going back to Finn and Jake.
Right.
Finn and Jake come back.
Yeah.
But they're not. That's not the story anymore. Right. They're done with that story.
Yeah. They might be secondary in these other stories, but that's
But that connects us in. That lets us live in the world without having to. We're not creating a real world, but we also don't have to feel like we are trying to reopen a story.
Right, exactly. That we're not reopening.
So emotionally,
this
yes,
thing.
I think that makes sense.
It respects the finality of what you actually did, of what had actually happened already. They don't have to undo anything.
Right.
You know, it's like the Will and Grace mistake.
I mean, they were very literal about saying like that actually didn't happen. That was a dream.
Yeah, and of course, and that still bothers me. You know, I still hate that.
I really dislike that.
It was funny, like the new series was funny too.
But I don't like what I'm saying is Futurama wasn't as literal.
Even as explicit. Yeah, right.
Like, because it can still be. They didn't say that didn't happen.
No, they said that did happen, and therefore now we're back.
Yes.
To do more shenanigans.
Right.
Whereas Adventure Time is not trying that at all. They're saying, yeah, we might actually see those people again, but like you said, their story is done, and we're actually interested in this other thing. There's more to this world.
Feel like you get little snippets that feel like epilogue-y.
Yeah, yeah.
And not, we're not reopening their story. We just get a kind of like, it's fun to see them in the world and how they live.
Because we know their story.
But also like this, they're also not afraid to kind of change the tone.
Yeah.
And they really leaned, I mean, it is dark. It is adult.
It's really dark. I was really surprised how dark it was from the get-go. And
there are dark and adult moments in Adventure Time.
Yeah.
There are moments in this that I'm like,
whoa,
this is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because and again, I think back to Adventure Time, and there were moments that were overwhelming, but they were almost hinted at.
Yeah.
Sometimes they were pretty.
Sometimes, I mean, like Finn's arm gets ripped off. I mean, it's like there's some pretty intense things happen.
Yeah, but it gets darker. It is like we essentially see the collapse of like 3 different universes.
Yeah.
Like we see, maybe not the collapse of the universes, but people definitely died.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Several people.
And it was pretty, it was
pretty dark.
It was dark, especially, it was especially dark because we're going to different universes, seeing different versions of the characters we know and love.
Yeah.
Leaning into the Fionna and Cake thing. That's like very, like what a great setting to do that. We're already taking an alternate version of Finn and Jake. And now we're just going to see like different iterations of them over and over again, because they're not the only ones from the Adventure Time that show up in this.
Right.
There's the farm world. Is that
the farm world. Yeah. The, like non-magic world.
The non-magic version of Finn and Jake, that world. We get to visit that again and see where that has gone.
Yeah.
And that was fascinating.
Yeah.
And hard because like Finn and Jake were kind of best case scenario.
Yeah.
So now we're jumping to realities where it's like,
oh, this was actually not
fucked.
Things didn't get, things weren't good.
Because in Farm World, he becomes Ice King, Finn does.
Yeah.
And it does not go well.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't go well. And then in the other universe, you've got Bubblegum and Marceline are sworn enemies because the vampires have taken over instead, and they like, plunge to their deaths, when in Adventure Time they end up being lovers. Like they end up in love, and
technically they sort of do.
They sort of were. They were already too, I think.
Yeah. And
they kind of were in that world too. Yeah.
Right. And I love that. And they bring that through line. So that relationship, first of all, they're pretty overt about it.
Yeah.
And the Fionna and Cake world version of Princess Bubblegum and Marceline, originally in Adventure Time, they are Prince Bubblegum,
Prince Gumball, and Marshall Lee.
And Marshall Lee. And he's not a prince, obviously, when their world isn't magical anymore.
Right.
He's just Gary Gumball, and it's still Marshall Lee.
Yeah.
And I love the alternative reality versions of all of them. LSP.
So funny.
Is hilarious.
Lumpy Space Princess. Oh my God. So good.
So funny.
Oh my God.
So dumb. Huntress Wizard.
Huntress, yeah, and Hunter, yeah. It's good.
But like what I was saying.
Yeah.
cut me off. They lean into that relationship.
Yeah.
I would say the main B plot of the show, which we didn't touch, is watching a relationship grow between Gary Gumball and Marsha Lee.
Yeah.
And that is, I mean, Adventure Time started 100 years ago. And it was clearly like a kids program at the start. And it became more and more adult, but essentially was still a kids program. And they were pretty light on the same-sex relationship elements.
Yeah.
They were not subtle at all.
No, they weren't. Not for this.
No, they did it too in Distant Lands. They gave Bubblegum and Marceline like their own kind of episode,
kind of capsule,
episode, which I loved. But I think it feels they were a lot less fearful around it. They were a lot less timid around.
Benefit of being on cable.
Yeah, that's true. But they were able to just like unapologetically have a same-sex relationship and have that be kind of like a whole plot point, which is like it's not. And I love the way that we see the bits and pieces of Bubblegum and Marceline's relationship sprinkled through Adventure Time.
Yeah,
because it's at odds. It's not.
Yeah,
it's they're not like actively together, and there's reasons for that.
Yeah.
And I think they do it very well, and they tell that story very well.
It's one of the really extraordinary through lines of Adventure Time that then kind of comes to a head in that longer episode on HBO, and then now gets kind of mirrored a little bit more in all these alternate universes.
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
We get to see it, and I think it goes along the same line. They're not afraid to hit dark subjects too. That's why they're, we're looking at. There's so many instances of like forbidden love happening, and really, I mean, every world they go to is like a different complex problem.
Yeah.
I mean, they go to a world where the Ice King is good.
Yeah, and he's he has his powers. Mad.
He's not mad, exactly. And he's kind of like the hero of that world. And Princess Bubblegum is the one who's mad.
Yeah. And turns out it was because he like used his magic to like infect her with it, instead like gave the curse over.
But Fiona kind of like has a crush and she falls for him, and by kissing him breaks the spell. It's so stupid.
It's so weird.
They set it up because they sing in that one too. Yeah. They're able to get away with. They really make it kind of like a Disney feel in that one. They do play with. They clearly do some genre jumping too. There's a whole episode that's very. What's that apocalyptic show? Mad Max.
Yes.
Very Mad
Max. Yeah.
And so they're playing with genre. They're playing with, tone for each of the different universes that they jump to.
They use a lot of the tropes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it's one of those things where they use something simple like a trope that we understand, and that's how they can get away with kind of extraordinary things.
Yeah.
Because they use a very simplified tool. They just use the things we will recognize.
Yeah.
And that will get us closer to this. I mean, it's wild. We're already buying into...
Yeah,
bubblegum talking, it
makes me think of the adage that the specific turns into universal, where it's like it keeps like kind of it's keeps going in and out and in and out. So it's like we've got these like very, very specific weird things that they keep putting in, really specific, strange, they seem like goofy stuff. But then once put into the larger context, it becomes this like very universal story of like these forbidden loves or old rivalries or grief or death. I think that add that to the list where it's like the don't be afraid to kill people. That would be one way to make a really good story. You have to like that's like the story of stakes, right? It's like it has to be real. You have to be able to actually.
There have to be stakes.
Yeah, stakes. And then I also remember that video that we watched. It was maybe you didn't see it, but we'll tag it here. It's about someone was analyzing Adventure Time about like why it works so well. And their thesis about like it being basically a modern epic poem.
I don't know if I watched this.
It's interesting take. The video talks about it.
I feel like I did maybe. This sounds familiar.
Yeah, where it's like the idea is like they like, split up like an old Greek epic poem and kind of paralleled it with Adventure Time season and episodes and stuff. But there were other things that made it so there wasn't just like, oh, well, each verse of the epic poem is there's like a verse, and then each collection of verses is a song. And so you've got like a season is a song, and then each episode is a verse, because they were very clear story points that happen in each of these verses. It's like it's a chunk of event is a verse.
So like any series.
Like any series, right. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
But there are other features like the bathos, the concept that you have like these very, very serious, epic in scope things that kind of get resolved or thwarted by relatively simple solutions, kind of like a it's like you have the in Fionna and Cake, there's this whole episode of like she's kind of falling for this ice king that's good, and they do this whole song and dance, and then she kisses him at the end, and he just kind of like crumbles into dust. It's just like poof out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And they don't like spend much time on it. It just kind of like happens, and it's this undercutting of emotional.
Well, and that's
what's happening.
That's what solves all the issues in the world. That's like it felt a little eerie to them because the Ice King was good. Princess Bubblegum was mad. And so it felt all topsy-turvy, and then it went back to normal after that. And Fionna had killed a bunch of the candy people because they were attacking her. And she has this like crisis, like, wow, I felt really good killing them until I realized they were just doing their job, following this mad person.
Yeah.
And now she's back to reality, and she's going to have to deal with a lot of dead subjects that just were protecting her.
Right.
And it's like, I mean, like really puts a lot of pressure on this young girl. I mean, she's clearly older. She's clearly like a young adult.
Yeah,
she's not a
She's not like a child
like Finn and
Finn starts at like 11 or something.
Yeah,
but it's that pulling of the rug out from what you think is happening, and kind of like you just have this height emotionally, this emotional height that you're able to just like undercut it completely to great effect.
Yeah.
So I think I'm adding that to the list of things that make Adventure Time and Fionna and Cake awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't do it in a way either that is for shock value.
Yeah.
It's not like Red Wedding Game of Thrones moment.
Sure.
Where you're like, you don't have to do that.
Right. Yeah.
that was just gross and uncomfortable, and I didn't like it. And that same thing could have happened and not like that.
Yeah.
And then again, hot take. I know a lot of people cite that as being like, it is an extraordinary.
It was a pretty big deal when I read it. Yeah, that was like, it was huge. In the books, it's better. It's better in the books.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
And Game of Thrones, I didn't like when they did it, but they did have moments where they just shocked me, and I was like, I would get like physically angry. I'd be like, I hate this. I don't like this. I don't know why I'm watching this.
Yeah.
I feel like you tricked me.
Yeah, and there's something different there too, because it's like I don't ever feel like I'm being tricked by Adventure Time or Fionna and Cake. They're not tricking me. Mm-mm. They were showing me the whole time. You just found out it was something else.
Yeah.
That's what's happening, not
it's
like
elements of like mystery writing.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's like the whole time. It was like that the whole time, and if I had just been paying attention, I would have been able to see it. Is what it feels like, at least. Yeah. Feeling a little bit meandery in this episode today. What else? What?
I don't know. I don't know. I felt natural progression.
There was something interesting too that I thought was in Fionna and Cake, their use of other literature in it, which I was thinking about too, like in like traditional epic poems. There's not a whole lot of mentioning of books because there weren't any books. That's what the epic poem was like. Like the Odyssey was like hundreds of years of people just like telling the story out loud, and then someone wrote it down. And I think that's such a good device to use, is having a character who's having some sort of crisis, using some kind of literature or art in the story. It's a story within a story to like make it make sense. It's very Hamlet, right? Like you've got a play within a play that's going to like reveal that the king is a murderer. But Simon ends up in someone else's body, like watching this story. He's like kind of reading this book, a weird like future book.
Yes.
And it's ultimately to like learn this lesson from Betty Gold, being this like god of chaos that his, lover from the past has become this god of chaos. Yeah, very simple stuff. She is kind of trying to teach him this lesson that he kept, basically he's where he is because of all the choices he made. And maybe if he had made other choices, it could have been different, but he didn't. So these are the choices you have. There isn't another way to go. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of an acceptance lesson there, but he only is able to learn it when he's like following this book. This is kind of a choose your own adventure book, and he keeps like making the same choices. He's like choosing this one character instead of another character, but he's using this book in experiencing the book. He gets to kind of have a mini version of like redoing kind of his whole life. Yeah. Where it's like suddenly at the end of the book, he has to make this terrible choice between these two characters. And he's like, but that's not how it, but I don't want to make this choice. There's got to be another choice. And this companion that he's with, it says like, well, maybe you would have been able to if you had just like not kept choosing that one choice. Right. Could have done something else. But now that you did, it's like, that's how it is, right? You can't go back.
Right now, these are your choices.
Yeah, these are your choices now. Yeah. And I really like the device of using stories within stories to like make those things clear to characters. It's the second time I've seen it this explicitly as kind of like a video game. I read a book that was kind of like that, that had kind of a subplot where someone was like playing kind of a video game and like learning this weird lesson about life, and because it ends up being
isn't that a lot of the isn't that
my whole thing?
Isn't that all the lit RPG things that you read? They're all playing video games and they're all learning stuff in the video game that there teaches them about their outside life?
That's life now for them in lit RPG. What I'm saying, this wasn't a lit RPG anyway. It was something else. It was a cyberpunk post-apocalypse.
I know, but I'm saying like you're describing what sounds like all of your.
No. It would be like someone in, like they would have to be having the experience and then also having like a mini version of the experience in the experience. Does that make sense?
I think so.
If they were in the video game, they would then in that video game have to be playing a smaller video game that's within that video game to learn this bigger lesson. Just like Simon has his whole life and then he's reading this little book.
That's not the same as them having their whole life and then...
No, not in lit RPG for sure. We'll do a whole episode about lit RPG. It'll be...
Yeah.
It's different.
It's a whole thing, yeah.
It's a whole thing. So it's brilliant. That's what I'll say about Fionna and Cake. It's pretty good.
It's good. Is there anything, I mean, we're just sitting here raving about it. Is there anything that you can think could be improved?
I think there was one thing that I thought about. I think, in fact, I'm going to sound like I'm going back on it, but that scene where he's the character in this like alternate universe or this future world and he's reading this book.
What we just talked about. Yeah.
That device. I love the device. I don't love that they turned him into that character. It's felt like it was just, we've introduced those two characters at the very end of Adventure Time. They're in the last episode of Adventure Time.
Yeah.
As kind of like, 1,000 years in the future.
Yes.
And we just want to see them again because we're in like another universe, I guess. We just want to, it felt a little bit like they were just using someone for the sake of using those characters. It didn't make sense to me why it needed to be them, because all he does is like take over that guy's brain and then leaves. It wasn't consequential that it was them specifically.
But it was in his world in the future. So he's reading an artifact that he would have made. I
don't follow.
The book that's a piece that was made by Simon.
Oh, really? It was?
Yeah, it was like, oh, thank goodness the Ice King in this world made this thing, but they're from his world.
Oh. That gun book was made by the Ice King?
I think so. Because it was the history of the crown. Or the antiquities or whatever
Yeah.
It was made by
Petrikov.
Wasn't
Interesting.
it?
I thought it was something else because he was like reading this other book.
Reading what other book?
The book that he was reading was like that Choose Your Own Adventure story.
Yeah, that's the book.
Really?
What do you mean? What?
Because it was supposed to be Antiquities was the book that he was looking for. That wasn't about Antiquities. That was about those two mages that were doing magic and stuff.
Why do you think he was reading that book?
I don't know. I guess I missed that.
You thought it just like he was looking for one book and then he's
and ended up with a different book. Yeah.
No, I think that was the book that's supposed to tell him how to access. That's why he was trying to get through the book. Because it was telling him how to access the crown.
He wrote the book. I see. Okay. I rescind my criticism of using that character.
I mean, maybe I got something wrong, but like it's their world, and he was looking for a book, and it's like, oh, this is it. This will help me find the thing.
Okay.
Because he said something like, oh, I'm so glad the person in this world made this or something.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm saying something wrong. But
okay.
something to think about though. Because they're in his world in the future, right?
Yeah.
That's the idea. And I thought that there was a connection because he had made the book.
Okay, we'll have to get back to you on that.
Revisit.
We'll revisit this because I am now not remembering. What else? I don't know if there was too much. I don't love that they didn't get all of the voice actors back. That made me sad. Prismo wasn't what's his name?
Yeah, Camille Jamani.
Yeah, that's his name, right?
Camille Jamani.
Yeah, because I thought he was so good, and I don't know who it was.
Oh,
and
he is so good.
And I was very sad that it wasn't his voice.
Yes, that is sad.
It wasn't Gary Gumball was not Neil Patrick Harris, but
Neil Patrick Harris wasn't Gary Prince Gumball in every episode in Adventure Time either.
Oh, he wasn't?
I think it changed as well.
Oh. Andrew Rannells did it, and I thought he did
Andrew
great.
Rannells, great. But Donald Glover was back.
Donald Glover was back.
Which is very, very happy.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I don't know if there isn't much that didn't work for me.
No, it's
really
really
hard.
difficult.
And that's like part of the benefit of like how they're able to the kind of storytelling that they do, where it is kind of this outlandishness that you're allowed a lot of latitude with what you do because of how magical the world is and how many options there are and how many they don't back themselves into a corner. They give them every choice that they make in their storytelling allows them another avenue. It moves it forward. It gives you more options, not fewer, which is astonishing.
Yeah, it's like twofold. It feels like the thing we talked about in the Emperor's New Groove, where they created like the tone of it to be open enough that we believe in everything.
Right.
Like we'll buy into it because it's meant to be silly.
Yeah.
And it's meant to have layers of awareness and so it's not outside of the world because they built it.
Right.
And there's that, but then there's, like you said, it's that it's literally leaving strings open for more future stories.
Yeah.
Without opening 17 cans of worms, like you said. Like it's not just being like problem here, grenade here, grenade here, grenade here.
Right.
It's just they all exist. They're there.
If we never see that open thread again, it will be inconsequential.
Right.
If we don't see them again, it's fine. But if we do, we know who they were. We can easily rope them in. Yeah. Yeah. Very good dungeon mastering.
Yeah, it feels like dungeon mastering.
Very good dungeon mastering. Yeah.
It's well corralled.
Yeah.
Without, it's, I don't know, it's such an expansive world. It's really, really very interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing too, is they give us they just give us a lot to see and a lot to experience. They're giving us new things all the time.
Yeah.
In a way that's not exhausting. I don't know how they do it. I guess that's like...
it's fun.
It's fun.
They make sure they always got a little bit of fun in there. You like everyone, even the villains. Like no one is...
The lemon carbs are amazing.
The lemon carbs. Oh my God.
Jinx Monsoon.
Jinx Monsoon is one of them.
One of the voices.
Maybe this is a good transition to get to some superlatives.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's go with Oscar worthy first.
Okay. Oscar worthy moment.
I think I think I would have to go with the weird writing of the first episode.
It starts off as a dream
It
sequence.
starts as a dream sequence. It's like very
little Miyazaki references.
Yeah, Miyazaki or Sailor Moon. Yeah, all
Both of
that's
them.
really interesting.
And more, I'm sure.
And then she like kind of comes to into real life, and then it's just how huge a departure it was from what I was expecting.
Yeah.
And it's a huge departure from Adventure Time, but it's also a huge departure from what you know of Fionna and Cake, and it
Their world is
immediately
different, yeah.
roped me in because I was like, I don't know what's happening, and I want to know so bad.
Oh, the way they sprinkled out, they give out information so well.
Mm-hmm.
They only give you what you need to know now,
Yeah.
which was very obvious in the original series too, Adventure Time, where we're like,
We don't have any just in case
there
information.
There are people who watched 3 episodes and were like, I don't know, it's some silly kids episode. It might be fun to watch it when you're high, but like it's just silly. And I'm like, watch it in one go.
Oh my God.
It is insane because
It's
each
pretty
episode
great.
feels really
like silly and it's
contained
small.
and
They're 10 minutes long. Yeah.
good lessons, very fun to watch.
Yeah.
But they build and it like
Yeah,
it really means something.
And so that then when this first episode came, I was like, it's like they're back at it. You know, it felt, I was roped in immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
But
That's
you
really specific. That's
gosh. Okay, my Oscar-worthy moment is when they find baby Finn in that one world, and it's like they're in like a whole alternate universe of babies, and then they end up accidentally bringing little baby to like the Mad Max world, and Cake grabs the baby and smells the baby and asks Bubblegum if she wants in on it, and I think that is one of my favorite moments ever.
I was going to
It's
say
so
for
funny.
my Oscar-worthy moment, that Cake has some excellent one-liners.
Yes. Cake is awesome.
I did consider you went in on this.
You want in on this? Smelling the baby. Oh, it's so good.
Just like there's a moment where she's like shipping other characters. She's like, I don't know. She's
What? She's what?
you know what shipping is?
No.
You know what shipping is?
I don't know what shipping is. What are you talking about?
When you, oh my gosh, shipping
Yes.
is when you watch something or you're reading a story and you're like, they should be in a relationship.
Oh, I've never heard that before.
You've never heard that before?
Not a once.
Storytelling expert over here.
I've never heard that.
Oh my God.
Sounds like
Shipping.
slang as kids are using these days.
That's old slang.
What?
That's like 10 years old.
Oh, weird. Yeah. I love when she was doing that though. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, kiss.
Yeah.
She keeps telling people to kiss. Now kiss him. Oh, it's so funny.
It is hilarious.
Oh, it's good. I like Cake a lot.
So I think
It's a good duo, and I love them in a way that I also love Finn and Jake as a duo, but like totally different.
They yeah, they're really, I don't know. They were able to find a unique dynamic, but without losing all the qualities.
Yeah.
There's a similar dynamic in that, like, Cake is maybe the older one, but kind of more immature.
Yeah.
And like Fionna is still kind of young and unsure about the world, but like very, very like wise and old for their age.
Yeah. Yeah, she's got an old heart, old soul. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. What about unearned moment?
The unearned moment that I have selected tonight. There was a moment where, let me think of it, how exactly it went. Fionna takes her shirt off. Mm-hmm. And Cake makes a little joke. Like, ooh, you get naked. And Fiona's like, don't make it weird. And I get it. I do. I understand the dynamic. And it was just a little disappointing to me in that it feels like it was a good opportunity. That was a great opportunity to give like a real parallel to Finn and Jake.
Yeah.
Where
she
Finn
could celebrate in it.
Takes off his shirt and he had been like, yeah,
I got my shirt off.
And doesn't like, and of course, like, because Fiona's a girl and there's like different societal expectations on women and being shirtless. Like it feels like it's like dripping with, I don't know. It took me out of it where I'm like, I wish it was like, she has to be different because she is a girl. Yeah. It's the only time that I really felt that like they took a little bit away from Finn's counterpoint. Yeah. Just because she was a girl.
Yeah, I can see that. I think I want to push back on it a little because I think her personality, the differences between her and Finn are such that she seems a bit more shy. She's a little bit more modest than Finn is, and not just because she's a girl. It's,
I guess that moment made me feel like
it was
because she was a girl.
Yeah.
And maybe that's me reading into it. Maybe that's me putting my own societal expectations as a filter over it, as a lens. But I don't know, because there are plenty of times where you're right, where she's a little more shy, she's a little more modest.
Yeah.
But
she kind of like
wasn't really in this, like in that moment even. She was like, she wasn't shy or weird about taking her shirt off.
No, but she would be shy and weird about someone pointing out the fact that she has taken her shirt off and that she's like trying to be sexy, because she's not really. Like even knowing just a little bit about Fionna from Adventure Time, it's like she like blushes and kind of gets a little starstruck in a way that Finn, when he kind of is crushing, he kind of goes AWOL, right? He goes crazy.
Like
he
young
gets
boy punching the girl he likes.
Right, exactly. He gets a little
Doesn't
energetic.
know what to do with his body or whatever.
While she's a little bit more like,
but
she'll kind of like.
I guess I've always kind of had a little weird. I've always felt a little weird about that.
Yeah.
And always felt like, well, it's in Ice King's mind. Yeah. And he's making her this like shy girl that he wants to fantasize about.
Yeah, I guess.
And not, that like, that's the thing that's changed about Finn, that like, is like confidence and maybe that does bug me a little bit, that it's like, that's the trope that like, well, when you turn the boy character, the girl character, you have to make them like
them shy.
Like I wish it was like, write a Finn and Jake episode and just change their names.
Yeah.
I like that there's differences in the characters.
Yeah. And I think that would probably come with voice acting, though. If you just like had different voice actors do it, it would be that absolutely. Would in itself make it different. Yeah. 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 I don't know. I think there are people that are like that, and it's not just a trope.
There are people like that, but they're the counterpoints to Finn and Jake, and it's a very clear like, because there's a girl, this is the difference. That's.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Bechdel test 101. It's what makes the girl different. It's all to do with how she deals with boys. Like that's that's the, how is she relating to her love interests? Like that's the difference between girls and boys. And I don't quite buy it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, this wasn't directly about love interests too.
Sure wasn't.
Yeah, this was
not for her, for
Cake a little bit, but
no, I mean for Marsha Lee and and Gary Gumball.
Oh, yeah.
The B plot.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It was a pretty big through line.
Yeah, it was big. Yeah. I agree.
Why are you being weird about it then?
I'm not sure how we got to them.
Because you said it's not about, the story wasn't about romantic
It wasn't.
relationships.
No, her taking her shirt off wasn't about romantic relationships.
Okay. You just said it wasn't about.
Yeah, that scene that you're talking about wasn't about romantic relationships. Yeah.
Well, then that's what you say.
Yeah, I just did. I said it. What else of the superlatives? I already gave you. Oh,
No,
my
you did
unearned.
not.
I didn't give you it.
Oh my God.
Unearned moment. There's something loose about the justification for Prismo having made Fionna and Cake. And that's kind of like where they came from. That all he wanted was something of his own.
Mm-hmm.
I wish it was a little bit stronger a choice than that. That it wasn't just like, well, I wanted something too. That it was.
Yeah, there might have been more, and the fact that we can't remember the exact description makes me think that it wasn't. What they do is they like don't over-explain.
Yeah, they don't over-explain. Sure, I just that felt weak to me because especially even watching it, I had a moment of I was guessing what was happening because like Prismo's like sitting in his little cube and he looks like he's not clean shaven, which is weird because he's like a weird shadow on the wall. But he has like stubble. They did that before he has a little bit of stubble and he's like watching a video of like Finn and Jake. And I was just thinking about how like, oh, but in this world, Jake is like, he's dead and he's like watching a memory of Jake. And I was just thinking like an even better, justification is like when Jake died, Jake and Prismo were best friends, that Prismo being kind of like outside of the timeline would be able to create Fionna and Cake and take them back in time to shoot into Ice King's brain, even if he had made it in the future or whatever future means when you're outside of the timeline. I just like that would have been a better justification. It's saying. Like he missed Jake because Jake dies and that has hurt him so much that he would have tried to recreate, Finn and Jake that are gone.
I guess my problem with that, see, and then we get to time stuff and it gets complicated because if it's not a problem for him to just take something from the future and just bring it to the past because he's outside of the dimension, then Jake's not dead.
Well, not back then.
Not ever, because he lives outside of the time dimension.
Well, Jake doesn't live outside the time dimension.
Doesn't matter.
Well, it kind of does, because if Prismo is like looking anywhere else, then Jake is dead. There's a point at which Jake and Finn stop. But if he creates a story, they never have to stop.
Yeah, but he doesn't create a story. He creates a dimension.
Yes.
Which will eventually lead to deaths as well.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that I don't know if I have the real solution, but I'm thinking that just like I just wanted something from me was not enough for me.
That's fair. I think if we start, I don't know. I think it gets tricky if we try to be that specific.
Yeah.
Be like, give us a timeline of like, well,
sure,
he said he misses
that would be,
him, and then so he's gonna go back.
I think that would be a mistake. Yeah.
To hide it.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit. Then it feels a little overcomplicated.
Yeah. All right.
It's a very tricky. It's a tightrope.
Well, and that's why dimensions and time travel are a rough thing to do in stories.
I often think that they are not done well.
Yeah.
Time travel is not.
Yeah.
I am not like like Umbrella Academy.
Umbrella Academy garbage.
Not a big fan.
We'll do a hate episode about Umbrella Academy. Oh my God, it's so bad.
That's so hard.
Hate watched it so hard. We didn't even watch the third season.
Not yet.
Oh man, are we gonna do it?
We hate watched 2 full seasons of that.
We sure did. We sure did. I was so hoping that the second one happened.
Just watched a show out of hate before. I was like,
oh, this is going to be so bad. I'm going to watch it. Okay.
So mad about it.
So another superlative. No.
Favorite alternate character.
Okay. My favorite alternate character is LSP. LSP, because it's LSP in Adventure Time, and it's
the letters L.
Yep.
S then P.
Lumpy Space Princess, and even in the Fionna and Cake, it's Lumpy Space Prince.
Lumpy Space Prince.
But in the real world, Fionna and Cake,
a ball of
his
lumps.
name is right. His name is
a lumpy coat, but
Ellis P.
I think that's very.
And he's so funny. Oh my God.
He's very.
Oh,
very
that
funny.
voice actor is ridiculous. The most ridiculous voice, and just
Pendleton Ward.
Oh, it's Pendleton Ward. It's ridiculous, and just the character is so capricious. It's like it's very funny.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm thinking maybe the short-haired bubblegum, the one in the world where the vampires are against.
Yeah, the Mad Max bubblegum.
No, that's not Mad Max.
Oh, that's not Mad Max. What was Mad Max?
Mad Max is Farm World.
Oh, right.
Because they're
yeah. The military bubblegum.
Feels like she's really in her element.
Yeah.
And they are just rude to each other. Oh,
yeah.
She's just a bitch. She just is like still getting shit done.
Yeah.
But not nice. I don't know. There's something that's very interesting about that universe, and it feels very tragic.
Yeah. I think I would do like the.
I like her. I like that version of bubblegum is.
Yeah. What about favorite alternate universe that we see?
That's tough. I mean, like the thing is, like all of them are hard to watch.
Yeah.
All of them are kind of difficult universes.
Yeah.
But I think I'd probably go with that one, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it just is. It was very interesting to watch.
I think I like the baby one. I wanted to see more in the baby one.
About the baby one.
It was like they're all just babies, and that's
cute.
so funny. And I was like, I wish we could just see more of that.
Took the baby to the one.
They took the baby with,
and then it got left, but then it didn't.
It didn't. It was still in. It was in the tank when they got back. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
I thought they had killed the baby.
I thought they killed the baby too, and I was like, oh my God, this is so real.
It was very intense. I was like, I got very scared. I was like, no, they're really, really leaning in.
Yeah.
Any more superlatives?
Most likely to be the next spinoff.
Based on Fionna and Cake or based on the Adventure Time universe in general?
Lemon grabs. In general. Oh, the lemon grabs. Oh man.
I want everything to do with the lemon. I love them. love them. I mean, there was kind of like a mini arc.
Yeah.
With them, but not in a way that like Steaks or the Human World or obviously not Fionna and Cake do. But I could do with more
lemon grabs.
Them, future, past. I don't care. I love them. They're horrible, and I love them.
Yes, they are horrible. They're so awful. I think that maybe a Wizard City spinoff.
There was a Wizard City spinoff.
There was like one of the episodes, but like I'm saying like longer.
Like a full, okay.
Something full. Yeah. Something a little bit more. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we're done.
Great.
All right. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Then a Moment. I am Pavi Prochko. And remember, whenever you have a baby, take the chance to smell it.
And I am Colin Funk. And remember, there are many versions of yourself, so it matters what choices you make.
All right. See you later.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Then a Moment, a Pavitas production project, hosted by Colin Funk and Pavi Prochko. This podcast is produced by Chicago Podcast Studio. Our opening cartoon was created by Gloriou, and our theme song was composed by me, Pavi Prochko. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite listening platform. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Then a Moment Pod, all one word, for updates on new episodes and behind-the-scenes content. If you have any feedback, comments, concerns, or kudos, you can email us at thenamomentpod@gmail.com. Please rate and review us wherever you can. It would help us out a bunch. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.